I'm Teisha Bader with the JBS News Update for Wednesday, October the 29th, 2014. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu responded to a report from The Atlantic's Jeffrey Goldberg claiming that some unnamed U.S. officials referred to the Prime Minister as a coward in regards to the peace process and also regarding the threat of a nuclear Iran. As you may have seen on IBA News, Netanyahu responded that he will not be deterred by such personal attacks and that he will continue to defend the State of Israel. The Prime Minister said our vital interests, first and foremost, our security and a unified Jerusalem, are not the uppermost interests of the unnamed officials who attacked our government and me personally. I'm being attacked simply because I defend the State of Israel. Despite all the attacks against me, I will keep defending our country and Israel's people. Netanyahu added that such attacks against him would not damage the U.S.-Israel relationship. He said, "We've had arguments before and we'll have them again, but this will not come at the expense of the deep connection between our peoples and our countries." And Israeli President Reuven Rivlin reaffirmed Israel's ties with the U.S. in an interview to Israel's Army Radio today, where Rivlin said 3 principles bind Israel's foreign policy. The first is U.S. ties, the second, U.S. ties, the third, which is no less important, is U.S. ties. Rivlin also made clear in the interview that Israel's recent announcement to build in Jerusalem, which was criticized by the U.S., was not a provocation, but rather a lawful settling of one's own country. A Palestinian man from Gaza who approached the border fence with Israel was shot at by IDF forces when he ignored their calls to stop. After IDF forces identified the 27-year-old man and another Gazan approaching the fence, they called on them to stop and move away from the security fence. When those calls were ignored, the soldiers fired warning shots in the air, which were also disregarded. They then fired at the legs of the man, hitting one. The 2 then fled back to Gaza, and according to Palestinian media, the man who was hit in the thighs was taken to a local hospital in moderate condition. The Associated Press reports that Egyptian authorities have given residents living along its border with Gaza 48 hours to evacuate in order to enable them to demolish the homes and build a buffer zone. The buffer zone is intended to stop militant infiltration and the smuggling of weapons between Egypt and Gaza. This follows an attack this past weekend by Islamist fighters on an Egyptian army post, which left 31 Egyptian soldiers dead, after which Egypt also closed its border crossing with Gaza indefinitely. Approximately 800 homes will reportedly be demolished to create the buffer, which Egypt says is vital for its national security. The Times of Israel reports that the new foreign policy chief of the European Union will make her first trip in that capacity to Israel next week. Federica Mogherini will take over the role from Catherine Ashton this Saturday, November the 1st, and reportedly will arrive in Israel the following Friday, November the 7th. Mogherini, who currently serves as Italy's foreign minister, visited Israel back in July. On her upcoming trip next month, her first as EU chief, she will stay in the country for 2 days, and in addition to Israeli officials, will also meet with senior Palestinian Authority officials in Ramallah. European Parliament member and new president of the EP's Delegation for Relations with Israel, Fulvio Martuscello, told the Times of Israel that Mogherini's visit was very important. He is in Israel this week at the invitation of B'nai B'rith International. 5 Israeli universities were ranked among the top 500 best global universities for 2015. U.S. News and World Report released the rankings yesterday, listing Israel's Weizmann Institute of Science at number 102, followed by Tel Aviv University with a ranking of 148, Hebrew University of Jerusalem at 152, the Technion in Haifa at 236, and Ben Gurion University of the Negev at 431. The man known as the British Oskar Schindler received the Czech Republic's highest honor yesterday. 105-year-old Sir Nicholas Winton is credited with having saved 669 Czech children, most of them Jewish, from the Nazis. 7 of the children were present at the ceremony yesterday. Winton was flown to the event in Prague on a Czech military plane, where he was presented the Order of the White Lion by Czech President Miloš Zeman. as a young man of 29, Winton arrived in Prague in December of 1938, and after seeing the refugee camps outside the city, began organizing trains to take children from Nazi-occupied Czechoslovakia to the safety of foster families in Great Britain.
I thank the British people for making room for them, to accept them, and of course for the enormous help given by so many of the Czechs who were at that time doing what they could to fight the Germans and to try and get the children out.
And turning to our programming for tonight, Wednesday, October the 29th, at 7, Alan Chernoff, co-author of The Tailors of Tomaszów, a memoir of Polish Jews, talks about the childhood home of his mother in the years leading up to the Holocaust from Congregation Agudath Shalom in Stamford, Connecticut. And then at 9 tonight on L'Chaim, Mark Golub sits down with Knesset member Dov Lipman with his take on politics and life in Israel. That's here on JBS and jbstv.org. And that's the JBS News Update for Wednesday, October the 29th, 2014. I'm Teisha Bader.